I look so innocent and pure. Is this what Doja Cat feels like? I really like how I did my makeup for this video. Toss a coin to your Witcher. Hi everyone. So I know that I have taken a while to get this video up, partly because I had a bunch of other video topics that came to mind, and you know, that good old seasonal depression was hitting, but I figured with Corona having inoculated me into my apartment, I had no excuse not to do my job. And I do consider this a job because you guys pay me. You guys are my bosses technically, so I hope you are benevolent boss. I'm Princess. I am your pop culture, I guess right now, you know, big titty wench shield maiden. I have a sword for this video, and it's a real sword because I have dated so many sword people and it won't come out. Foiled again. But I did take pictures with her sword earlier, so it does come out. It's just old, and it's my friend, so I'm gonna put it down gently before I fuck it up. Join us on Patreon. We have some fun stuff. I have 2 episodes of a podcast currently up right now, and yeah, and also some exclusive writing content if you're interested in that. So yeah, with no further ado, let's talk about this series called The Witcher. I was like, okay, what the fuck is a Witcher? And I'd heard of it loosely from the video games, but I hadn't actually played them. I hadn't read the books, although my best friend BJ, shout out to you, boo, he was reading them and said that he liked them, so I knew what it was and I had heard of it. I knew Henry Cavill was gonna be into it, and I was like, Henry Cavill, that could be delicious or dangerous. And I think what's interesting about the success of The Witcher is that it comes so closely after the end of Game of Thrones, and sort of a lot of other fantasy series that either tried to catch on the Game of Thrones fever and failed, or shows that started at that point and kind of ramped out. I think the only show that's really managed to be like a Game of Thrones equivalent is probably Outlander, and Outlander does it because it has a very, very particular kind of audience and is just prestige enough that everyone seems to ignore that it's full of rape and homophobia and racism, but that's another topic for another time. I also think it's really important to remember that fantasy is a very popular genre, and that a lot of the things about this series that make it work aren't that unexpected, but I think it's unexpected in the one way, is that it happens to be so successful at being a fantasy series while leaning in very hard to those elements. I think the only show that I know recently that has been that hard capital F fantasy has been The Magicians, and that is again based on books. And there's another whole conversation about if you can have hard fantasy series when you are basing them off of IP, or if non-IP fantasy can work that way, but because there's a lot of biases when it concerns fantasy, I never really expected that Netflix's The Witcher series would be such a big and legitimate success. And while there are clearly issues with the algorithm and how it chooses to, you know, decide what becomes a hit and what's get promoted, because I mean, I saw that scene of Henry Cavill in the bathtub several times on my New York City subway platforms, and you know what? It worked because I definitely wanted to know what that was about. But I think I am impressed by The Witcher because its success tells me that you can have a really well done, fun fantasy series without diluting the fantasy part of it. Unfortunately, after Game of Thrones, I wasn't sure if that was gonna be a real attainable thing. I think Witcher has kind of proven why. And so in this video, I'm gonna talk about The Witcher, obviously, why I love it, why I think other people love it, what is genuinely problematic and issue-filled with it, and how it does set the stage for the possibility of more hard fantasy series getting made. Quick background. So The Witcher is a fantasy series created by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. That sounded right to the ear. And there are 5 books in the series so far, I think it's done. There are 5 books in the series, and they've been turned into very popular video games. And now we have Henry Cavill looking like a leather-clad snack daddy in in that role. And he looks so good that I don't even hate the wig. I mean, I do hate the wig because the wig is literally like Titans worthy of terrible, but like, I'll allow it. The Witcher takes place on a landmass known as the continent, which I don't know why people keep making fantasy worlds where like there's only one landmass. Like, I know, like, did we love Pangea that much in social studies that we're like every fantasy world is Pangea? It is a magical European medieval-ish inspired world because, you know, the medieval period only happened with white people and they love to do that. The world is populated by witches, demons, dragons, porcupine men, little girls that scream too loudly, other creepy shit that you wouldn't have heard about unless you were really into Baba Yaga the way like some of us, you know, real gays were. Because, you know, if you're bisexual, you go through a phase where like you learn a lot about Russian mythology, you learn about Baba Yaga, and you're like, you know what, maybe I want to be that bitch with a chicken leg house. The Witcher takes place in like the best fairy tale world ever. I mean, it sucks because, you know, you're very likely to die. But it's fun in how it's constructed and how very naturally you feel the supernatural world and the human world together. It feels lived in and gritty enough that it has that like realism that people just love about that period, but also fun enough that it makes you care about these people and makes you realize that they could have fun. If you're bisexual, you go through a phase where like you learn a lot about Russian mythology, you learn about Baba Yaga, and you're like, you know what, maybe I want to be that bitch with a chicken leg house. Who are our heroes? So we have Geralt, Gerard. He's our blonde Superman. He's the Witcher. He's probably the least developed in the cast, along with, you know, the young baby girl. I think the thing with Henry Cavill as an actor is that less is definitely more when it comes to him. I don't think he's bad. I don't think that he's not good, but I do think that Henry Cavill, he really needs the writing to be there for him, because when it came to Superman, he was limited. When it came to Justice League, he was better at encompassing the character because he had a different director. He responds to the direction that he gets, and I feel like with The Witcher, he got someone that allowed him to be campy in a fun, engaging way. I would compare him favorably to the way Kevin Sorbo was in the Hercules series. Like, it's that same kind of like, I'm a chiseled jaw man, I'm here, I'm queer-ish, and I'm going to wear leather and make you want me in your hot tub. And I think, you know, he's carrying that legacy very strongly, and I am enjoying it, because I think that just like Jason Momoa, oh, this eyelash, you know what? I put lashes on for this and I played myself because the glue is not sticking. Do I just take it off, guys? Is that what a real bitch would do? What would a Witcher do in this situation? I'm keeping this all in, by the way. I believe that you deserve an authentic vlogging experience, and I don't lie to you guys. Where was I? Geralt is interesting because as the series goes on, he is very stoic. He is very, you know, he's not gregarious for sure, and I think that he reminds me of almost like a Clint Eastwood character, you know, runs into the neighborhood, defeats the horse thief, takes the woman, and then you leave. And I think we don't really get to spend a lot of time with him, but he is sort of the perfect protagonist for this world because he feels safe. You don't have to worry about him getting, you know, too effed up. He can heal, he can make the vampire, you know, Dracula eyes. He's the perfect protagonist for this series, even though at least in season 1 he's probably very underdeveloped. But I think the season finale really did open the doors of showing how he also just wants somebody to love. I think his relationship with Yennefer and the instant sort of father-daughter vibe you get between him and Ciri kind of show that Henry Cavill is definitely prepared to play this as emotional as necessary. And this fucking lash. Next we have Yennefer of Vangabar? Wunderbar? Yennefer. She is probably both the most interesting character on the show, but the one of which there's a lot to examine about how she is portrayed. She is sold by her stepfather, into the rectory where all these witches go because Yennefer is, I think, like 1/4. She's like 1 drop rule elf, and that's why she has like purple eyes and everything. So she goes to the rectory, trains to be a badass sorceress, but then gets bored. She goes through this procedure in which she is able to perfect herself, which lot to deal with there. But she goes through this process and becomes this sort of power player, but her arrogance and her hubris really help set into motion a lot of the bad incidents that happen and directly affect Ciri, who is... Ciri's not a bad character, she's just a plot device. She's just kind of, you know that she's gonna have a larger purpose. Right now she's the Destiny Child, but right now she's just running through, you know, snow, dirt, forest, cape to the wind, and I'm just like, girl, I'm rooting for you, but I'm also tired of you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yes, queen, but like, less queen. I'm interested to see how she's gonna go now in the next season with her interactions with the crew, but right now I think her character is just very kind of like fine. Also, Labard, whose name Jaskier? Hey Siri, what's the name of the bard from The Witcher?
Look mean and pretend you're a mute. Can't have anyone finding out who you actually are.
Okay, I found this on the web for what was the name of the bard from The Witcher.
Jaskier.
Check it out.
That's it. Thank you, girl. I should have written that down, but I didn't. I'm incorrigible. So Jaskier is fun. I think he really brings that, like, he's like a mixture of Joxer and Gabrielle. You know, if you took those two characters and you smushed them together, you would get Jaskier. And I think that he's been a necessary component of bringing levity and fun to the show. I think it's really benefited from that, and I'm really enjoying it. And I enjoy him, even though he's like, you know, what did they call him in on his trailer? He's like the universe version of John Mayer. I would say more Ed Sheridan, because like, Toss a Coin is a banger. That's like, you know, he can have that one, you know, it's fine. And oh, so the plot, right, that's important. And I think the plot of Witcher is both interesting, but like not at the same time, which is weird. So basically you have the Fire Nation, because I don't remember what the fuck it's called, Evil Land. These Evil Land has been slowly convalescing power, gaining power, and is taking over all of the continent, right? And one of the biggest places that they were going to go after was Ciri's homeland, which was ruled by her badass grandma character, who is definitely an Isabella of Castile type. We stand, even though very problematic historically wise for everyone that looks like me, but you know, that archetype is fun to watch. When we begin the story from Ciri's timeline, and we'll get to the timelines, we are at the point where the evil empire has finally had enough power, enough resources to come and slaughter this kingdom and lay it to ruin and potentially do untold damage to the rest of the continent. It's very basic, but I think because it's so basic is why it is chopped up into different timelines. I'll admit, one of the things that made me interested in watching this show in the first place is how divisive it was when the reviews came out. There was that terrible review from, I think it was Entertainment Weekly, where like it didn't even finish the first couple episodes and was like jumping around. It was like, it's terrible, and everyone was like, bruh, what? And then so many people were freaking out because of how the weird timeline was. So I was sitting here like, is this show really that weird and difficult? And I will say this. I think that when you don't know the premise of the show, and I don't even think that the show did a really good job of marketing what it was about, because as someone who really only knew information from like Wikipedia and all those resources, I did not know what it was about. But what compelled me was seeing how many people were watching it, was seeing the promotions everywhere, and how divisive and people saying it was confusing and everything. So I was like, all right, let's give it a try. And I do think that weird is not always as marketable as we think it would be. Because the thing that Game of Thrones had working for it, in my opinion, is that it was very easy to strip away the fantasy aspects of it and really focus on the political brutality fantasy stuff, which people love. That people love that kind of stuff. It was based on, you know, books, and it very quickly gave a level of prestige to it, and because it was always giving you twist and twist and twist and twist and twist, so you were always being surprised at it not being generic, you know, even though it had been around for like almost 20 years by the point that it became a television show. So because of that, a lot of people were able to respect Game of Thrones. Whereas I think with something like The Witcher, it is definitely more a campy Xena vibe. And for me, as someone who was like a Xena stan, that's not a bad thing for me. But that level of camp is a acquired taste. It is not something that we get that much anymore outside of like sci-fi or certain television programs, and honestly I think that's a sad thing. I think those shows are great. I think they often push the envelope in ways that other shows cannot do because they have the element of camp, and so I enjoy that aspect of The Witcher. I will say it does sometimes look super cheap, and let me just go back to these wigs real quick. I don't know why y'all don't hire black people for these shows, because like I will walk down the street and see my sister out here lace set, glory. I saw some girl one time after the whole Anna Joke thing was happening on Teen Titans, or excuse me, Titans. This girl had like starfire red orange hair and her curls. She looked mwah, bellissimo. And I'm watching this show and I'm like, where is it? Where is it? Okay, one of these girls out here in these streets could hook up Henry Cavill, secure his hairline, and protect him. But y'all don't want to do that. And I don't know why. The hair and the contacts, this is kind of minute, but to me they matter. It matters to an aesthetic, to fantasy, how willing you are to go and outside of the usual markers of beauty, of normalcy. Like the fact that Dany had silver hair was always like a big deal, but she was supposed to have silver hair and purple eyes, and they were like, purple eyes? That's too ridiculous. Well, toss a coin, because now Yennefer out here with purple eyes. And I say this as someone who loves the show, it's not that complicated. I think a lot of times people want to have like the meaning of life or some deep shit explored in these shows, and it's like, or it could just be like fun monster slaying stuff. I had more fun watching Witcher than I have of a lot of prestige television, because I enjoy something that you can just like, every episode feels like an actual adventure, not just one continuing like, and we're on this enormous character journey. It's the first season. Okay, it's okay for things to be a little bit insular. It's okay for things to be a little bit more slower paced, that we're having fun. Like when you think about a show like Xena, what was great about it is the cumulative power of Xena. If you were trying to do season by season, girl, the mess. It's not that consistent. Most shows aren't that consistent. Like even Buffy has 2 terrible seasons. So like to me, I was very okay with Witcher taking its time and being fun. And I will say this, despite the characters not being super amazing, I got really attached to them. I was really concerned about them. I thought that they were, quite honestly, like especially the flashback episodes, like everything with Jaskier, everything with the Grandma Queen. Grandma Queen was a stunt. I loved her. I was like, I want her to succeed, thrive, everything. So I was really happy to see her in that setting. And I think that sometimes you want to sit down and watch a show that just gives you a good ass time, and I think Witcher was a good ass time. That's the pretty much sum of it all. It's like I don't need it to be like, if I want to watch something that's really deep and thoughtful as fantasy or sci-fi elements, I'll watch Deep Space Nine. You know, I love that it puts character first, plot second. That's what I prefer more, and the stakes are high in universe, but they're not so outrageously, ridiculously high that you can't just sit back and relax. I'm not stressed out about if Siri's gonna make it. Like, she gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. I'm having too much fun with this video. It's that big Witcher energy. There are 2 big jarring things that I think are important to critically critique about The Witcher as a show, and fucking eyelash. The 2 issues in Witcher that are probably the most problematic and need to be addressed are the ableism and sort of the weird racial metaphors that kind of happen in the show with Yennefer. So she's a person with disabilities. She has sort of a physical body difference, and she is limited in some of her mobility. she's still very powerful. And one of the things that I do think is positive about Yennefer as a character is that she still has a very important love, romantic relationships. She is not treated as sort of, you know, she's not treated as childish or intrinsically like pure, which people tend to do with people with disabilities. She is complicated, ruthless, manipulative, but also empathetic and interesting from the beginning. And I think that is worth noticing, but it is also very disturbing that Yennefer decides to go on this, takes this incredibly invasive process to fix herself and make herself beautiful, which requires her to remove her uterus. She gets a full-on hysterectomy, and she transforms herself without any sort of pain medication because she just needs it to happen. And the idea of her wanting to be beautiful and that being something that has been denied to her plays such a heavily role in her character. She is played by an able-bodied actress, and even though she has a very, you know, fulfilling sexual relationship and romantic relationship at the beginning of the show, you know, she gets her real proper love interest, you know, Geralt, Gil, she gets Gur after. And I think that matters, but I also am not someone who lives with that kind of condition. So I wanted to take a quote that was from Lila Manick from Wear Your Own Voices magazine, and she says the following: Yennefer's attempted suicide is another overplayed and destructive depiction. While disabled people are no less susceptible to mental illness, Yen's attempt to end her life unfolds as a result of her disability. This idealizes suicide as an escape from her disability, a way to break free from the damaged body which has brought her hardship and shame. This idea is extremely inaccurate and detrimental to the images able-bodied people have of disabled people. There are yet more instances where Yen grapples with her disability. Her struggle with infertility, left by her initiation procedure, is an arguably relevant take. Perhaps this is a commentary on the unwavering pressure and stigma which follows women unable to bear children, but it seems to be the only well-developed aspect of her character's interaction with disability. I think this is really important to mention. One of my good friends and fellow YouTuber, Sarah from The Princess and the Scrivener, did a really important thing about the discourse around Lena Waithe's character from Outward has been about ugliness and sort of like how we talk about people being ugly. And I think this continues on when we talk about people with disabilities. The fact that Yennefer's entire storyline is so centered around her physical appearance and what she has lost, and then trying to go back to what she lost is it is polarizing. I know that there are people who like her character and think that things about it are done very well, and who do think that there's an importance in showing her having been loved and having been sexually active before she transformed. And also, I think that there are arguments to be made about the fact that her transformation doesn't fix anything. If anything, it makes her life worse. However, as the article fully states, if you make beauty the endgame and cast a beautiful able-bodied actress, you are setting up this entire dynamic of saying that her value comes from her being beautiful and not really talking about who she is as a character anymore. That's taken off the table. And you never even get a disabled person in the room because you were always going to go with an able-bodied actress and an able-bodied performance. And I think that matters as well. The other thing that's a little bit smaller of an issue, I just want to touch on, is the fact that, like, there is a clear allegory for the elves and fae folk being indigenous and black people in terms of their relationship to humans. We get from the show that humans have really terrorized, slaughtered, and spread misinformation about the elf people. It is very on the nose, very obvious, and I don't necessarily hate that it happens, but I find that trope aggravating in fantasy, especially when there are not many characters of color within the main cast. We have Yennefer, and the evil witch from the evil Fire Nation Kingdom is a black woman, but we have very few characters of color in lead roles, in positive roles in the show itself, that when you do have these allegories and these metaphors, it would just simply be nice if we had characters of color to sort of complete the dynamic. You know, giving us that one token fantasy captain of the guard is not enough. If you are going to have these stories and have this allegory, maybe hire actors of color. Maybe make it even so more on the nose that you address sort of like colonization more directly. I would prefer it done that way than sort of just you sprinkle a few brown people into the storyline and then you like make everyone who's white, even if they're Fae, have the person of color storyline. This is also something that happened in Maleficent 2, and it was very aggravating then, even though I loved all the jawbones and jaw structure in that film. One of the things that I first heard about The Witcher was that it made no sense and the timeline made the show basically incomprehensible. So when I started watching it, I was expecting to be slightly confused. I was not. And I don't mean to sound rude or to dismiss that situation, but to me it's like there are 3 different storylines, 3 different timelines, and we're watching them play out slightly out of order. But in my opinion, even though the characters don't age, there are plenty of hints and connective tissue to see when it all comes together. Like, I personally think a linear version of this story would be boring. I think that it would be boring because it is a very paint by numbers evil kingdom taking over a not evil kingdom. Well, morally ambiguous. A lot of us have kind of suffered from kind of MapQuest fantasy being so popular, and MapQuest fantasy is basically what I call fantasy series that open up with a map. Like, before you meet a single character, person, place, or thing, you get geography, and it's like, I don't even know what the book is really about yet. Why are you giving me an entire cast of characters? And there's nothing inherently wrong with that premise, and I get why when you get into a long series or you're writing a long book that you think that you need to do that. However, I do think it's okay to be slightly confused when you're entering a futuristic hard sci-fi series or, you know, a really weird, intense fantasy series taking place in like a brand new world, because we don't know these locations. We don't know these characters, these conflicts, these histories. Like, the characters know it, but we don't. And we should be figuring it out as we go along. And I think, personally, a map has always indicated to me this idea that we're not going to be able to keep up with things, so we need like a little cheat sheet at the very beginning. And again, inherently not a bad thing. Like, I love the 5th season and it has a map at the beginning. But at the same time, I'm like, do we do a disservice to sometimes just not letting us begin? Like, I think of like Hyperion, and like you just get thrown into that story. It's like you just do it. Parable of the Sower. There are so many texts which is kind of like, all right, and now we're here. I also think that there's nothing wrong with being slightly confused a little bit when you don't know what's going on because you don't know anything about this world. Like, I think when characters pause to be like, remember that time and that thing, it works for the audience to learn everything, but there are other ways to communicate that. And I think that The Witcher is good at communicating in other ways. I do think it can be confusing for people who are sort of just used to fantasy series. It's kind of like, here's a play by numbers of our entire world. But I don't know, I don't find it as engaging. And so I think that it was actually quite a boon for me as a viewer to go into The Witcher and have to like piece together when things were happening. I was like, okay, so now we're going here. All right, now this is then. Oh, so this was happening then, and then we do this. And I don't know, I had fun with it. I think it was fun. And I think ultimately that's why The Witcher is doing so well. It's got a hot cast. It looks really fun. It's not that long. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And it's got really good action scenes. All the fight choreography is really good. The set is really good. The female characters are actually pretty interesting. It has a really good way of using the camera to show gaze for everybody. There's a little bit too much boobs, you know. And I love them, but like a little bit too much with Yennefer. No butts. No Henry Cavill butt cheeks. That gives it a negative point. You give me all these titties but no butt cheek? I want to see Superman's buns. We deserve it. We were cheated out of it in Justice League. We were cheated. Release the Snyder Cut. No, don't. Please, God, don't. If you were on the fence about if you wanted to watch Witcher, I would say check it out. It is not perfect. It is not, you know... If you love Game of Thrones and you don't care about dragons or diabolos and you just like the political machinations of a fantasy world, this ain't for you. If you like Xena, if you like the magicians, if you like Hercules, if you like more campy fantasy, this is more your lane. Oh, I forgot one more complaint. The show is too heterosexual. It's too white and it's too straight. Fix it. But yeah, other than that, it's fun. And I think I had forgotten what it's like to just be able to binge watch a fun show that's not completely narratively inconsistent, like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which I have come to hate because it's so, like, the acting is so good, the characters could be so good, but it's like, what do you even stand for, show? Your mythology is so bad. And the monster designs in Witcher are so fun. Everything is like creepy. I think it's a romp. It's a romp. It's fun to watch. It really, you know, made me excited to see the whole thing. And I'm excited to see where season 2 goes. I haven't been excited for a series like this in quite a while because, as you know, I watch Game of Thrones reluctantly. I don't watch The Magicians anymore. I don't fuck with Outlander. So The Witcher gives me my broadsword needs and my campy loves. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like what you saw, please subscribe, share, like, comment down below, get them interactions going. And yeah, it was so great to see you guys, and I hope you enjoyed all my weird dorkiness. I did my makeup really good today. I think my makeup for the next couple of videos are gonna be really good simply because I'm not going anywhere and I wanna, I might as well be cute for y'all. This fucking eyelash, it better not embarrass me. One of my piercings worked out. I look so cute, guys. I'm obsessed with myself right now. We're almost done. We're almost fucking done. Stop disrespecting me in public. That's why you have to beat your kids. Fun thing, but like whenever I do a video and my hair is messy, because I just don't do my hair super often, I'm always torn between like, should I have my hair like in a ponytail or should I have it down? Like, what makes it look nicer? I'm gonna stay with the ponytail because I've done it for so long, but like I kind of wish my hair was down right now, but I get to swing it. Oh yeah. Ooh. What do y'all think? Did you like it better up or do you like it better down?